welcome to another episode of the Merseyside Health Podcast. This is a local podcast where we get people in with interesting backgrounds in the health and fitness industry and just interview them and get to share their knowledge and experiences. This week we've had Mr. Gary McNamara and Dr. Ash Cox, and they've come across from Crosby, so not too far for them to travel. They're at the Red On Performance Centre where they head up a business called Plug-in Rehab. They work alongside a local coach, Coach Mike Chadwick, and the real sort of speciality of these guys is the military population and the tactical athlete. However, they also work with elite athletes from triathlon to ultra marathons and everything really endurance and strength based. They've both worked in the military with extensive backgrounds there, Royal Army Physical Training Corps and rehabilitation instructors as part of that as well. And then they've since gone on to do extensive postgraduate qualifications in the field of musculoskeletal and fitness and medicine. So these guys are the top of their game, and it was a great conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. Right then, so we're here for another episode of the Merseyside Health Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Gary McNamara, Dr. Ash Cox from the Red On Performance Centre and Plug-in Rehab. Guy, do you mind giving us a bit of an introduction of who you are and where you're from?
You go first, mate. Alphabetical order. Okay. So, hey, going first. So Dr. Ash Cox from the Red On Performance Centre and Plug-in Rehab. Don't know what else to say, really. That's it, isn't it?
No, give him a bit of background, mate.
Give him a bit of background. Did a bit of stuff in the military, kicked around there for a bit. So, was like commando trained, para trained, moved across into the Royal Army Physical Training Corps and did some stuff with UKSF, the Parachute Regiment, Gurkhas, the Guards, and then left there and then pursued what I deemed to be sort of an academic career. So went into some research, so did 3 undergrad degrees, 2 postgrad and a PhD.
Is that all?
That's it, just a couple of calls.
It's a bit greedy that really, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? So boxed those things off and then, found myself with these guys. They were stupid enough to bring me in, I guess, and on the sidelines,
And then I'm Gaz, so similar background actually. So I was in the military 15 years as well. I was engineer, so bomb disposal first, then moved over to be an exercise rehabilitation instructor at Headley Court, and then I decided to leave and see what else was out there. So I worked in like the medical sector for a little bit, but kind of working in patient education, what else to do, clinical trial work, stuff like that. And then we set up Plug-in Rehab nearly a year ago, so June last year, just to kind of give the health and fitness industry a little bit more coverage rather than just having people drop off programs and all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure we'll probably go into that anyway, but it's we both work at the Red On Performance Centre now, which is just down the road.
Just in Crosby, basically pretty much neighbours, aren't we? So
literally neighbours, yeah.
So from bomb disposal to chaos in like rehab, was it NHS England, that patient education type stuff?
Yeah, so I worked for a company. I was one of the directors at a company called Cognitant, which was trying to change like how health information and education was delivered. So they'd seen like a need for better education, for better outcomes and that kind of stuff. So I was working with a lot of directors in the NHS and across universities to try and change it.
Yeah.
Nice.
How did you get on?
Really well.
That's why he's not there.
Do you know what? I think it's always difficult, isn't it? Like I worked in the public sector in the military for 15 years, and you feel like you are making a little bit of difference and changes and stuff like that. So when I got out of the military and I went into a director role in this job, and I was like, I can make big changes in the NHS and do this and do that. You can't. You can, but it's going to be a long, drawn out process. I mean, we've taken some of the grant bids were, £2.5 million, and they were like, right, who's going to run this then? Is anyone up for it? Sorry, I'm busy. I can't do this. won't work in our hospital. I'm like, literally got £2.5 million to make this work. Does anyone want to use it? You know, it's just a lot on at the moment. So yeah. So it was an eye opener, definitely, into like what the actual public sector medical world was like. Definitely. Yeah.
You still got that £2.5 million kicking around?
I wish. That'd be alright, wouldn't it? Yeah, we could do with something. We could do with something, yeah.
Funds the coffee.
Yeah.
Direct capital investment comes straight in.
That'd be ideal.
That today.
Yeah, straight into this. But no, it was nice to work at that, like because we work with a lot of charities and patient groups and stuff like that. So changing their information, how that worked, and felt like it was a nice touch and a nice move. I didn't actually know you, Ash, until like a couple of years ago.
No. I kind of, similar to you really, I used the PT Corps to get what I wanted out of it. So I knew I wanted to leave the military kind of after the last tour really. So I was like, right, fucking I'm done with that. But I dropped out of school as a kid, do you know what I mean? So I didn't have an education to go into the civvy world with. So like I knew that I was good at sport. So I was a weightlifter, so I was a weightlifter from like the age of 11. So I was like, right, I just need to jump ship now, move across the PT Corps, and then get my education there, and then kind of leave and go beyond that. So
you're a bit more than a weightlifter, though, haven't you? You've got like some pretty decent
like
in weightlifting. It's probably like underselling it a little bit. So you're
a little bit maybe, yeah. So it's like international level sponsored weightlifter, So and then moved across to powerlifting, and again kind of got national and international kind of level awards for that. So did a bit.
So we're going to come on to strength later, definitely. So we'll pick your brains on that and take advantage of that. So plug in rehab then. From what I understand is the model is you've got coaches, personal trainers that are getting people on their programs and they get injured and they drop off the program and the personal trainer never sees them again. And plug in rehab seems to be like a safety net to prevent that. Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah, it's a stopgap, isn't it? And it was the reason we set it up was because there was a lot of people going to see a physio, for example. Not that I'm calling out physios, but
here we go.
a physio, doctor, whoever it may be, and they were getting told, depending on which physio they'd seen, to actually stop training, stop moving, all this kind of stuff. So the reason we set it up originally was to help coaches and PTs have a little bit of authority in their business, where we kind of said, actually, you don't need to stop moving, you can still do certain aspects of it. Particularly coming from like, we obviously both worked at Headley Court, so it wasn't uncommon to be working with triple amputees or people that had parachuted out and broke their neck and could only move their mouth. Like we still made people train no matter what it was, so that was always our goal, to make people train in whatever sense it was.
So when you've got someone with a bit of back pain saying they're not allowed to do any exercise, you're a bit like, well, hang on.
Well,
I've seen someone that's not open their door do it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's do a disqualify for the GPs and stuff out there. You know, my wife's trained to be a GP.
Yeah.
They are amazing when it comes to
unbelievable.
Diagnosing your cancer, saving your life, sorting your diabetes medication. But probably exercise is like a very small part of their musculoskeletal education, and exercise is probably quite a small part of their training package. Yeah. So it's
we always say that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it though as well, because we were spoiled in the military. So the way it works at Headley is you wouldn't just have a physio in the room, or you wouldn't just have an ERI in the room, or exercise rehab instructor. Everyone's there. So everyone from the surgeon to the doc to occupational health to rehab, physio, therapists, everyone's there and communicating. Whereas when I came out, I don't know about you guys, but when I looked around, I was like, hang on, everyone's just operating in their silos. No one's speaking to each other. And I guess like plug-in rehab now tries to bridge that gap. And I think the coaches know now that we're part of the team. We're not there to kind of take anything over. And we're there to work together and push everything in the same direction. Whereas I think when you look now and you just go to a GP, you kind of get a little bit protective over it. And it's not opinion. So, I mean, not to bash physiotherapists, but it's just that the works out there. I'm going to fuck it. Right. Safe up it. I've just done it anyway. Sorry.
I probably don't have the skills to edit that out.
Yeah, okay, sorry guys. I'm still a soldier at heart. So there was a paper in the BMJ a few years back that looked at physiotherapists' understanding of just basic physical activity guidelines, and most of them didn't know. Like and the same rings true for GPs, same rings true for personal trainers as well, albeit a little bit more anecdotal. But if you don't know what the basic prescribed physical activity guidelines are, I just don't understand how you're meant to be able to repair, prescribe exercise, get over injury, and get them back into normal everyday life, because that should be central to normal everyday life if you want to be healthy and look after their mental well-being.
So for the benefit of, if anyone is listening to this, I don't know if they are or not, but for the benefit of them,
Turned off after I
just
swore.
for us, these are the CMO guidelines from
2019.
2019.
Yeah.
So they've been out for quite a long
Yeah.
time, and do you want to just give the listener a bit of a kind of flavour of what they are? Because most people, when I ask people what they think their prescribed amount of exercise should be a week, they're still back in that 5 lots of 30 or whatever it was, the guideline before that. So something about that messaging got through. I don't know what it was, because people still think it's that. But do you want to just give the listeners a bit of a flavour of what?
So I think they're just being updated again at the moment. So as we speak, you probably won't see that until 2025.
I only just got my head around the last lot.
Yeah, sorry.
The academics need to just settle down a bit, don't they?
Honestly. So I think the first, or the going back a step. So the World Health Organisation said, like, look, we need to get a grip of physical activity, and this is how it should look. Then each nation kind of took control of their own individual physical activity guidelines as well. So the UK Chief Medical Officer took control of theirs. And 2011 really was the one that everyone recognises, which you spoke to then. And then it was updated again in 2019 by Dame Sally Davis. Now, when she updated the guidelines in 2019, they're the current ones, she openly admitted that musculoskeletal exercise and health was overlooked and put more of an emphasis on that. So when you see the infographic, which you never see in a GP surgery for whatever reason, I'm not going to look around your walls, but maybe one should be up there.
I put it on my Instagram
There we
a
go.
few years ago or something.
Yeah.
It's there somewhere.
So it is there somewhere.
It's probably a great thing to have on the wall
100%.
in the clinic.
100%.
Yeah.
So when they brought out the infographic, musculoskeletal type health was a little bit more central to that and was made a little bit more aware, because, like I said, Dame Sally Davis recognised that was a problem that had been overlooked. Some of my own work was used in a rapid evidence update in 2021 to kind of give the government and the Parliamentary Office for Science and Technology a little bit of a kick up the arse to, again, keep pushing this forward and making sure this was a message that was resonating with the general population. I think that's because of like days lost at work, general overall health and well-being that can come off the back end of engaging in musculoskeletal type exercise. So that was like the last recommendations, and on top of that, in addition to the musculoskeletal, and I know I'm doing this the wrong way, the main foundation of it is the 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. For me, there's a problem straight away with the messaging, because people think that they need to do 150 minutes of like just blasting through, sweating and bleeding, passing out. That's not what it is. It can just be a brisk walk. It doesn't actually take that much to get that going. Just this morning you were on your bike, I was giggling to myself watching you cycling to the coffee shop.
Yeah, I realised after the health messaging of not wearing a helmet.
Yeah.
Probably
I wasn't going to bring that up, but yeah.
Normally wear a helmet.
But yeah, obviously you're ticking that in the box, and I think a lot of people don't get the value in like active commuting and how that actually contributes as well. So what's happening in the next iteration of the guidelines, in Canada and Australia have already done this, is move more towards what we call 24-hour movement behaviours. So what that looks at everything, not just structured exercise, which would be 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous with 3 days a week for muscle and bone strengthening exercises. They actually go a step further and go, right, well, how much sleep, how much screen time, how much sedentary time. Again, sedentary behaviour isn't as simple as people see it. So you can be actively sedentary. It's a weird nuance. But what we're trying to do now is look at the whole day and try and structure a day that's best for overall health and well-being. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Me and my wife were talking about our activity levels and how much exercise and stuff, and the 150 minutes, and then she was like, oh, but if I do it at this intensity, I can do 75 minutes.
Yeah.
So what what's that all about?
So that's the vigorous side of it.
Yeah.
So you can do a bout of 75 minutes of just vigorous, or you can do 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous.
What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's hard enough for the general population to understand what 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous is.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if you were to approach someone who, and I mean no offence by this to anyone, but if they're inactive anyway, they're overweight, they haven't engaged in any type of physical activity, if you're to sit them down in front of you and go, right, go and engage in 150 minutes of vigorous activity, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity, they're just going to be on the back foot. I think if you get the message across that actually that can just be a walk and it's all relative. Social media is horrendous for it, so you'll see like the fitness influencers who will call out people being overweight, but their intensity of being vigorous or even moderately active is very different to what theirs would be. And I think people need to understand that it should be individualised and stratified. And there are more than one guideline as well. So there are guidelines for kind of pre-part and post-partum, whilst pregnant, over 64, under 18, under 5. So there's a lot to it. There's disabled guidelines now as well, which I think are quite useful. So there's been disabled adult ones since 2019. They were there in 2011, and then there was an update to a new set of guidelines were introduced for disabled children back in 2022. Yeah, 2022, in January 2022, which looks at physical activity intensities for disabled children. So there is something for everyone. I think what's missed is that at the level where health information is being communicated for, so GP, physiotherapists, so on and so forth, they don't know that. And if they don't know it, then the population's saying, I'm going to know it.
Yeah. For people that are interested in those guidelines, you can find them, can't you, on the government, based on the government website, and you can get those infographics for free.
Yeah.
So, if any physios or GPs or whoever listening, can get those really easily. And then if you want to buy the polished one, which I should have in my clinic, and Ashley's judging me because I don't have them, you can get them. They're not very expensive, but you can order them. So encourage people to do that, definitely. And we're going to come on to strength, aren't we? So, you've been pushing the strength a lot on your social media this week, and within those guidelines, they recommend part of that should include resistance training or strength training. So, can you talk to that, guys? Where that's a missing link, isn't it?
100%. We as an exercise rehabilitation instructor, when you're on that course, our whole, I suppose, if you're counting PT core course all the way through to ERI course, so our whole 2 years is based around how to manipulate strength training to make a soldier perform better or come back from injury or prevent injuries, whatever it may be. So we've got a bit of bias when it comes to that we have seen the benefit of people coming back and preventing injuries and all the strength training. We've obviously gone away and educated ourselves on that as well. So we're just trying to hammer home the message of it's the missing link. I say it on a lot of the webinars that I do with my coaches, it seems to be the go-to thing seems to be whatever you're comfortable with. So if you are a runner, military is really good for this as well. I'm not saying that everyone in the military trains strength, but if you're a runner by nature, you enjoy your running, or you enjoy your biking. If I say to you, you've had a busy day at work, you've got 40 minutes to go and do some form of exercise, you'll naturally bias that and go, right, okay, well, I'll go for a 40-minute jog then, or I'll go for a 40-minute bike. So all of a sudden you get into that cycle of going, well, I've had a busy day, I'll just go for a run again. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you've done 5 runs in a week, you've done no strength training. So all we try to do is push that message of the foundation for every form of injury, is having a good strength block and making sure that the muscles have the correct capacity to take whatever load we're putting through them. So actually trying to get people out of the habit of going, well, I just go for a run on a night time, that's what I do, and actually going, well, no, I should go and do some resistance training to make sure that I'm staying strong, because musculoskeletal strength is the biggest kind of reducer of mortality rate in the UK anyway. So when we're putting this stuff out, it's all from research that we've looked at and gone, well, actually we should be hammering home the strength stuff. I had some guy message me the other day, I don't know if you've seen that troll on Instagram, but he basically called out that triathletes shouldn't be doing single leg strength, and lunging and stepping and step ups and Bulgarian split squats had no relevance to running at all. All I had to do was go on Google Scholar, and I literally typed in lunging to kind of running mechanics and biomechanics and injury prevention.
Yeah.
There's about 150 pages of
right.
each one. And I was like, I'm not even going to click on the first one because I just wanted to like have my own sanity check of going, we are right. I'll message you and you were like, no, we're absolutely right.
I mean, we're so far past is strength beneficial. It's more the argument is like, what type of strength, what manipulation of the variables is going to be more beneficial. And the other thing we should probably say is that, you know, as in a physio context, we'll get a lot of people that are coming in, they may be sedentary and they've got knee pain. And when they're told, well, you need to get 150 minutes, the first thing they think is, well, I've got to start running.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But actually, the forces involved around the common areas where then they start to get pain, the knee, the hip, the ankle, in running is like, you'll correct me, 5-7 times body weight, depending on how fast you run and your height and all that kind of stuff. When you do a squat, a body weight squat, it's a bit less than body weight below the point of whatever the knee or the joint is that you're working. So actually, for a lot of people, strength training is the entry point to begin to be able to tolerate the forces involved in running. 100%. So we kind of got it back to front. It's like, well, I'll get fit by running, and actually, the regression from running is single leg strength.
Yeah.
You know, or bilateral body weight squat, 2 feet, maybe with some support.
Yeah.
You know, if you can't do that, and a lot of people that get that knee pain, actually, if they're perhaps a bigger individual, they're going to be more suited to strength training. They're going to enjoy it more than they're going to enjoy running.
100%. That enjoyment piece. The enjoyment piece, like for most people who are overweight, don't like running, like they probably tried to do a running program every January for the last 20 years and just got to a point and gone, this is absolutely awful, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
Like actually having a good strength program in the gym, they'll feel strong because they're big boys or big girls and they're like, actually I can push a lot of weight, I'm feeling good about myself, which is half the battle we're training anyway. And we had a good system at Headley Court where we wouldn't let, no one ran at Headley Court, as in like you wouldn't let a patient run unless they hit certain markers that we had as part of that process. So like 5 rep max, single leg press, we had like soleus raises, like all these different metrics that would inform, and like what I said before, like we all would sit around the table and it was quite a cool concept that we had sports and exercise medicine consultants, we had occupational therapists, we had ERIs, physios, and we all sat around the table and kind of like, this person's down on a 5 rep max single leg press, like what's everything else saying? Are we comfortable to let them start a run walk program, or do we need to look at different aspects of it? But we hammer on the whole point of like you have to test your athletes, because without testing, and we always say testing, if you don't test you're guessing, because that's ultimately what most people are doing, is just going, all right, you want to lose weight, and that's where we tie in quite nicely with our PTs. Is like a lot of them just go, you're 20 kilograms overweight, here's a nutrition plan and here's your training plan, let's go and start it. Well, how do you know they can even do any of these exercises? How do you know what they eat in the daytime? Like, you have to test them first, so we've got a baseline to go, well actually you're really, really weak and you are at risk of knee, hip, ankle injuries, whatever it may be. But we had a good process with that Headley Court, I think.
Cool. So you were lower limb specialism, weren't you, at Headley? And leading in that. Yeah. Do you want to give people, just let people might not know what Headley Court is, that's the thing. So
of course. So I said specialists in that, we're specialists in it all, but you get kind of pinned to a team each time. So Headley Court's the UK's largest military hospital, or it was, it's now Stamford Hall. I think it was seen as like the centre of excellence for military like rehabilitation around the world. So we'd have, defence attachés from America coming over, US Navy SEALs coming over, asking how we did our rehab and stuff like that. Essentially because of how diverse the patients coming into Headley Court were. So like I said before, someone will have had a car crash and can't speak, can't function, so they would go into a neuro team. You'd have a triple amputee, and then you'd have someone who had a bit of wrist pain because they were typing too much. So like sitting someone down with a special forces soldier. Yeah, exactly. And it was literally, so because it was so diverse, they had to break it into teams. So we had like complex trauma, neuro, lower limbs, upper limbs, spines, and essentially as a rehabilitation instructor, you would sit in as one of the leads, wherever you were kind of based on that, and it was pot luck of the draw, like where you came out. So I went into lower limbs for like a good period of time, couple of years, and then moved on to like spines and whatnot. But I think from a rehab aspect, it's cool because not many people see the level of injuries that you see.
Yeah.
I know when we were in Afghan that people were, like surgeons were leaving the NHS to go, I'll go work in Camp Bastion because I'm never going to see this again in my lifetime. So kind of coming over and doing that. And I always, that was one of my key drivers was when I left Afghan for the last time, I was kind of like, it'd be cool to be part of that rehab aspect of it. Just because you hear stories of the top surgeon in the UK has left his post at Great Ormond Street Hospital and he's going to come over to Camp Bastion to treat injured soldiers, and I was always like, if they're doing it, it must be quite cool, and it was quite cool to see. But yeah, Headley Court was a mad place. So you'd be walking around one day and Prince William might be just walking the other way, or you'd see David Cameron would be there, or
Simon Pegg was always there.
Celebrities.
Yeah, because he built the cinema, didn't he? So they used to have a cinema on site whereby you could wheel the beds in and all the chairs and that. If you had the license to show it was in the cinema, I think. Sunday you could go in with your family, and that was quite cool.
It was really cool. It's a bit like Hogwartsy style place. So like Headley Court was in like a massive like stately home, but you'd walk into the stately home and then you'd walk out and there'd be like a £25 million brand new pool that you can raise the floor on and you can lower it back down and all. It, like literally the leading aspect of rehab. I moved Headley Court. I didn't move, but I helped move the teams up to Stamford Hall, so the new one, and that's just like a level above that. So like we'd have football teams coming in going, can we borrow the underwater treadmill or whatever? Like, have you not got this at like Man United or wherever? Like, never seen one before in my life, mate. And I was like, cool.
And they're building, so there's going to be a national rehab centre, which is an NHS centre, and Stamford Hall, which is the military, and they're going to be sort of next to each other but slightly apart. So
Well, there was
it's going to be like a
supposed to be.
centre of excellence for rehabilitation.
I don't know if NHS are doing it now though.
Are they? I'm sure they are.
Are they?
Yeah.
So that was it was
They're
always
phase
meant
two.
when we moved. Is that what it is? Phase two.
Phase
So
two.
when we moved it up, it was going to be the DNRC, so the Defence National Rehab Centre, and it changed to the Defence Medical Rehab Centre because the NHS had kind of gone.
Right.
We're all right for it right now.
I'm sure I saw like it maybe 6 months ago in our physio magazine that was
Cool.
happening.
I hope
and
so.
I thought that was going to be great because rehab in general, is just like low priority
Yeah. Oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of medical and
Yeah.
that sort of funding piece. It just doesn't get any.
No.
It's not sexy at all, but actually, it's probably
It's
the
one of the most
most
fundamental.
important part. You like save
Yeah.
someone to this amazing surgery, and then just leave them at home
And that
to get.
That's what blew my mind.
diabetes.
I say it to you all the time.
Yeah.
It blows my mind that when we were in the military, like the ERI is almost seen as like the top one because it was kind of like you can get them back to being on the front line and doing their job and doing what we need them to do.
Yeah.
And it was just weird that when I stepped out, because I was always like, oh, ERI, I'll just go work in the NHS as lead one of the rehab teams or do something like that. I came out like, what's an ERI?
Yeah.
What's an ERI? What are you about? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, just been doing this and that and whatever. And they were like, no, there's not like ER. You mean physio? That's what you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't mean like
Yeah,
we
right.
work with physios and we
Yeah.
work alongside each other and make sure that everything's great. No, there's nothing out here, mate, for that. And I was just like,
Yeah, it's crazy.
What is
isn't
going
it?
on?
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Over the years, all those ERIs that have left the military could have gone into an NHS rehab department,
yeah,
and they've just been lost into the
And
ether. Probably working
100%.
in IT somewhere now. With all
Is
that
it-
specialist.
And when you look at it and take a step back as well, in a civilian context, there's an increased prevalence in things like type 2 diabetes and musculoskeletal issues that, whereas, yes, someone's had an amputation because of type 2 diabetes, but it still carries across to someone who's had it blown off. The same rules apply. And the ERIs who were obviously in the military, they would definitely lend themselves well to something in a civilian context. But just don't
an
know.
ERI.
NHS commissioners, if you're listening, we've
Yeah,
solved it.
that's
We've
it,
solved
we've done
it
it.
for
we
you.
sorted it. But it's weird. I'm going down the rabbit hole, but every ERI in the military, so you can't just be an ERI in the military. You have to have done like 10 years strength and conditioning training, leading like strength and conditioning teams, like building around that. So every single person on that ERI course, you can kind of sit next to and go, oh well, he's led the strength and conditioning at this, or he's done this and done that. So it's like it's a 15-year process almost for most people to get to the point of that, and then you kind of go, right, okay, well, just go into sales in this kind of bit. Do you know what I mean? It's mental.
Because I remember when I finished my physio degree, I was looking around at jobs, and then there were ERI jobs. Because when I first qualified, you can get my first interview to become a physio. 100 people applied for 2 or 3 posts. So that was that time. So I was like, oh, what else can I do? And then I saw these ERI positions at regional rehab centres, and I applied. They're like, no, you need 2 years physio experience to do the ERI. I was like, oh god.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
Yeah.
mad at that time. But okay, cool. So can we skip back again to testing? Because you guys, you're at the Red On Performance Centre, which is in Crosby, working alongside Coach Mike Chadwick, isn't it? Yeah. So the big USP that you guys seem to have is that you take testing really seriously, don't you? So can you run us through some of the tests that you do and why you do them?
Yeah, so
why you select, because there's so many tests out there, aren't there?
Yeah.
And you've selected some key ones.
Yeah. So everyone who comes through, everyone will have an idea of what they want tested. So that's the first thing that you kind of have to manage expectations and say, we're not doing that. This is our set, and there's reasons why. So they'll always come in and do hang up strength. Super easy. We always try and look after performance and health. So straight away with a hang up strength test, you can use it as a proxy measure of bone health and overall musculoskeletal health. And we use a pool of 61,000 participants from the general population, stratified by sex and age, and then we can put them into a percentile then, so whether in the top 10% all the way through to the bottom 10. And I think even from that first initial kind of metric, people are on the back foot a little bit, and that's not what we intend to do, but it just opens their eyes up, I guess, to we've taken this from the literature. So we're not just doing a hang up strength for the sake of testing. So we'll never just test to test.
Yeah.
So it's just a complete waste of time. So that's one of the metrics that we'll use. We always have to be cognizant of the fact that if anyone's coming in and they're looking at joining the military and they're under the age of 19, we have to use a separate set of metrics. And I think that's what's often overlooked within the testing. There's more and more people doing it now, I think, because there's money involved. I think anywhere where there's money, people will gravitate towards it, but they don't think they understand what they're actually doing with that data. We're in a fortunate position where I have literally no life, and that's all I do is just read papers, and if I'm not reading them, it's getting emailed of new papers that are coming up. And obviously I work in a musculoskeletal research department and still research, so we're ahead of the curve a little bit, I guess, and we can put that directly into practice, which is nice. We also look at lactate threshold testing. Now that is very much a performance metric. We compare them against the rest of the general population, but we also compare them against a sport and population. So if they are, and we've got a whole range of sports we can compare against, everything from fucking chess, chess, right the way through to like
not just chess, fucking chess.
Yeah. Just fucking chess. So we've got a whole, and that comes from again a centralised system that all the research and docs and whatever else are contributing into. So it's a nice pool to work with, and that allows us then to individualise training. So for us, what we're trying to do is train them as hard as possible in as little time as possible and with the minimum of risk in terms of injury. And this testing protocol and procedure allows us to do that. When we move on to the strength testing, that's when we start looking at kind of using velocity-based measures to...
this is what I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah,
this is
always comes up.
Cool, isn't it? It's getting technical.
So we'll establish a P-max, which is like a power max. We'll do that through a ramp-based squat protocol. So they'll work up to 1 RM. We essentially plot the eccentric and the concentric speed in meters per second. And the loads that correlate with that, and it gives us this nice little curve. And at the top of that curve is where their P-max is. Now, that we have to use the raw data for that. So there are algorithms and stuff that you can use, but they're not great. So what the team and I do, we take the raw data, we plot these, and then we find where the drop off in speed is from that point.
So is this that peak of the graph? Is that where they're lifting the heaviest amount of weight at the fastest speed?
Yeah.
So that's where your sweet spot is for
developing power.
For developing power. Because
Exactly.
once you get too heavy, you're going to notice that speed drop off, and then you're still training strength. It's not useless, but it's not optimal for developing power, which is what gets you to the ball faster.
Yeah, and I think that the misconception is, and I think it's humbling when everyone comes through and they're like, oh, why are you so concerned with power? I just want to be strong. And I'm like, so under strength, we've got, the hypertrophy element, we've got the power, the speed, the muscle endurance, but we lose power first as we age anyway, so that's the first thing that drops off.
Yeah.
And even from a civilian clinical perspective, for like physios and GPs and consultants out there, if you've got someone who doesn't have power is just force over time. So if they can't get off the toilet or they can't go up the stairs, that's just repeated bouts of expressions of power. So that's, and if you're losing it first, you need to get it to a high level. So when you do come to that drop off, you've got a good amount to kind of look after your life essentially in the long run. It is the biggest determinant, I guess, definitely is from the literature, of whether you're going to have good quality of life in your older years or not.
Your power's dropped off, you're not getting off the toilet basically,
Exactly.
and that's not good for anyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so you figure out that P max, and then the program that falls out from that, do you sort of say, right, go and train at that, this is the weight, and this is because when you use the force-based, the velocity-based software, you can see how quickly they're doing it. So, my lazy head would say, oh, Ash has told me my P max is going to be at 60 kilograms. Lovely, I'll go and do 60 kilograms. That's great.
Yeah.
But then I might do it like really slowly, or I might do it, So is there like a cue within the program that you're saying you've got to do that as fast as you can? For the, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, that's good. No. I think they're good questions. I think it's good to chat these things through because people don't understand how to translate that into practice. So we take 2 measurements of power. So we use a raw power metric, which comes from the P-Max through the squat, the ramp-based squat protocol. We also use a counter-movement jump test. With the counter-movement jump test, we're looking specifically at that stretch shortening ability. So the ability, for those who don't know, of the muscle to kind of stretch under load and then to quickly contract and then produce power. So we use that metric. If we highlight at that point, so we use 1,000 watts as the cut-off using the Sayers calculation. If they're under 1,000 watts, we're like, you're probably more predisposed to injury because you can't utilise that stretch shortening function as well as you should be able to. If they're over, they're less predisposed. And we always reiterate that doesn't mean that you are or are not going to get injured. But it gives us a little bit of a metric of what we need to address first in the programming. So if they are slow in terms of their power expression through the stretch shortening cycle, then that's when we kind of prioritise those types of movements. So we then put into place a plyometric progression model. Again, I'd love to sit here and say that we've developed this progression model, but it's not. We've taken it from the literature, which is bonkers. And when I speak to people, they're like, oh, where'd you get that from? I'm like, I just got it out fucking paper. Like, I haven't made this up. And I think everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel. The information's out there for people to use. So yes, that's kind of how we differentiate. And then other measures of strength, I think they're the two that we use. We do take a lot from the raw data in that squat kind of build up. So we do look at the depth of the squat. We look at the impulse. So where are they strongest in that squat movement? So did they need to work at the bottom? Did they need to work at the top? Trying to think what else we look at. We predict 1RM.
Yeah. So rather than get them, because that's a really useful thing to talk about. Because in physio, so we want to figure out roughly what their 1RM is so that we can program them accordingly. But you've got someone with perhaps their post-spinal surgery. Is that a good idea to get them doing a 1RM a couple of months after the spinal surgery? Probably not. You might get away with it, but you don't want to be the one to do that necessarily. So go on, how do you predict it then?
So we use about 6 different measures. We still get them, so this is where the military side of thing comes into it, and being a little bit more aggressive, I guess, in terms of rehab. So if I've got someone in front of me and they've just come out the back end of the stage, I'm like, work to discomfort, don't work to pain. So I'm happy for you to attempt to see where your 1RM is. Now, there's a misconception that a 1RM means it needs to be heavy. I see a 1RM as what you can do on that day at that time point, depending on your biomechanics, injury, fatigue level, so on and so forth. So if someone's come off the back end of, I'm going to speak about this because I've got some recently, but off a neck or femur fracture, they've had it pinned, they come back in, they've had the initial rest phase, and then they're coming to do some. I'm like, let's see where we get to. If it's painful, then we back off and we stop, and then that's when I can then count and apply those formulas. There's 6 of them, so the Mayu is probably the one that's the most generous, and anyone who's injured in his early stage rehab, that's what we can use initially, because it projects, it's better at projecting from a lighter load. And of course we can use 1RMs, 2RMs, 3RMs as well to predict an ultimate 1RM as well. But we tend just to use single lifts. as and when they can on the day, and then we apply these metrics and we give a range on the graph at the end as to where they could be.
Yeah. So it's a bit more than just guessing, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Slightly.
Yeah. I mean, but in terms of low-hanging fruit, most people that will come into that rehab space, unless they're in a professional setting, often they're not doing any strength.
Yeah.
So actually, you can almost guarantee benefit as long as you're not overloading too soon by being more conservative. And so I can see why people do that. When you're working with populations like you guys are, where people are looking for that extra marginal gain, then it becomes like absolutely essential, because otherwise it's just like you're training for training's sake, but you want to kind of squeeze that last bit of juice out, don't you? So
I think the general population, I was just going to say that, then the general population, where we kind of spoke about off camera, is you can get some nice marginal gains just with banded exercises and stuff like that, where people haven't necessarily done it. But then what we tend to see is a lot of people then just hang their hat and go, right, well, that banded works, so that's my plan for shin splints, so that's my plan for lower back pain, whatever it may be. Like, it's the progression on from that, isn't it? So I know military side, you were saying, I think it's a good way of summarising it, like it's aggressive rehab, isn't it? So it's like, we now have 16 weeks to get you back on frontline deployments, ready to go wherever it was. So it was very much like, this is probably going to be harder than any training protocol you've ever been through, because I'm just going to make sure that you are progressing consistently throughout that. I think that's something that's probably missing in rehab a little bit, in the sense of like, the progression has to be fairly fast and fairly like dynamic. I see too many people, particularly coming from a military standpoint. I always speak to Ash about it, is like, I'll see people who've been on the same treatment plan for maybe like 16 weeks and they're like, oh, I'm going to see my physio in 4 weeks time, and I'm like, no, like you should be progressing these exercises, whether it's tempo, weight, whatever it may be, but we should be manipulating these to make sure that you are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, because it almost seems like the rehab at the moment is like, up a little bit, let's plateau for 16 weeks, see how we get on with the pain. No, like, there's going to be pain. Like, that is part and parcel of coming back from injury, right? And like, no one goes, oh, I'm fully pain free now, I had surgery. And I think people get that in the head anyway, don't they?
And that's where we're quite lucky though in the military. So I haven't got all those qualifications because I was bored and had nothing else to do. Like, I did it because of what we were exposed to. So I was like, well, if I need to know how to rehab someone, I do need to go and do a degree in S&C. I need to go and do a degree in sports science. Because if you don't know that, for example, just the basic principles of strength and conditioning, you need to overreach to adapt. Now it's very different, and it is a very fine line between overreaching and overtraining. But if you don't overreach during the rehab process, and that's basic fundamentals, how in the hell do you think that you're going to adapt? It's not going to happen. And then in addition to that, I was like, oh right, well, if that's happening, then we need to have to fuel these people as individuals as well, to then allow for that adaptation to take place. So a lot of people in rehab, and we stress it on a lot of the webinars and seminars that we do, that people will be told, and it's not everyone, but certainly everyone that we've had come through us, to back off the calories because they're injured. I'm like, hang on, do the opposite, get more in, like, what are you doing?
I had a conversation with a client recently on that, and we were trying to get them stronger following a stroke, and I said, well, we're going to have to kind of up your intake, up your calories a little bit. They're like, whoa, I don't want to do that because I don't want to get heavier. It's like, you won't. Because if you're doing the program and you're doing all this strength-based work, you're going to need those calories, to adapt and to get stronger.
I think we've
don't have like, obviously calories.
Yeah, you don't want to be smashing.
But don't want to be like absolutely like awful diet and just like getting 10 pizzas in a day. But
I think most people like keep people on that calorie thing because they don't want the backlash of going, I'm getting heavier and now I'm struggling, or I feel like I'm fat, or whatever it may be, I'm eating too much. I think they'd rather just go, you can kind of afford to lose a little bit of weight while you're rehabbing, but actually no, because we need that muscle mass to make sure that we're building with it. So I think most people do it as a, just don't ring me, stay
psychology thing as opposed to, which again goes back to that multidisciplinary aspect you touched upon it earlier. Like, when it doesn't matter who you're programming to, what the injuries are, if you haven't got their buy-in and you don't appease them in terms of maintaining weight and body composition and so on and so forth, then they're going to sign off anyway and they're just going to do their own thing. I think people often think that maybe they don't know what I'm talking about, because I'll just go, well, what do you want to do? I don't know, you tell me. And then they'll tell me what they want to do, and then I'll put the science to it. It doesn't go the other way. I will never say to someone who's injured, right, you're going to do this, 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 and this. I'll go, well, what do you want to do? Like, oh, well, I want to go running. I'm like, all right, okay, Roger that. Happy days. And we've got a running protocol, which again is evidence backed. I'm like, if you want to run, we'll work together, and this is how it's going to look. Happy with that? And they're like, oh, well, I got told I couldn't run. I was like, I don't care what you were told. If you want to do it, we'll do it. Like, because that goes back to that whole self-determination theory aspect. And if someone isn't invested in their rehab, then they're not going to do it anyway. And rehab can be boring.
Oh, we say that all the time.
Yeah, it can be quite prescriptive, and I think
100%. That the best quote I had from a doctor at Headley Court. So the strength and the sports and exercise medicine consultants would sit in each team. So they were like the top doctors in the UK, all working at FA and England boxing, whatever it may be. And I just remember one of them saying to me, "What exercises do you think we should do?" And then I was like, just having to think, is what exercise is the best rehab exercise for someone? And I was like, yeah, this is a trick question, what's going on? And he's like, the one that they want to do, just send them that, what they want to do, it'll make them better. You just manipulate it around to make that work. And I always remember that now. So I'm saying with what Ash is saying there, it's very much you tell me your rehab plan and I'll design it to make it better for you, kind of thing. So
you can't do that about the education. That's the thing.
And
it does come back to that again. So you might have someone who wants to squat. I'm like, right, you want to squat? Okay, so how can we do this? Can we band it? So we might do some occlusion therapy, which I don't see enough of really in a rehab setting. There's quite a lot in the military, certainly where I was at the end in Catterick.
The blood flow restriction.
Yeah. Because we can do a lighter load and still get that return back. Or we can just do auto-regulation, so looking at reps in reserve. That has also been proven to work. Sod it, if your leg's immobilised, let's train the other leg, because we know that they'll still maintain mass in the immobilised leg. So I think, and you can't come to these conclusions unless you're kind of a geek.
Yeah.
Or just follow you guys on Instagram.
Well, just do that, that'll help. Yeah. I'm terrible at posting those, so don't follow me.
To be fair, all of our Instagram posts come through a net of me going, this is right, innit? Send it to Ash. And Ash is like, yeah, you're right. A bit of evidence on it, put some bits on it, and then go, right.
I might start doing that. I'll just put in anything up.
But the thing is,
as long as a lot of traffic.
It's okay. Send it across.
That's all human and all that does anyway. So.
Don't start on him. This is the problem, innit?
Well, guys, I'm conscious of your time. I know you've got patients this afternoon and stuff like that. So I think we could just keep going all day, to be honest. I've got so many more questions that I wanted to ask you. So maybe
we'll have to do another one.
Yeah. But look, massive thanks for coming over. I really appreciate your time. And good luck with the plug-in rehab. Good luck with the performance centre and all that kind of stuff. Any final comments? Where can people find you? I suppose Instagram is the best place.
Yeah, plug-in rehab or Dr. Ash Cox on Instagram or Red on Performance Centre.
Yeah. Better plug your event as well. You've got an event coming.
Yeah, we have got an event. If you want to come down, you can come down for it as well.
One other.
Oh, here we go.
I'm going
cancel
come on.
Yeah.
We've got the last thing I suppose, we've got a Red On event coming up, which is we're bringing some amazing speakers over, special boat service operators.
They'll be Crosby.
Yeah, they're going to be coming in.
They might get stuck in the mud.
And then who else we got? Rosie Wild, first woman ever to pass P Company. So
amazing.
Proper inspiring kind of chats as well.
Paralympian,
Scotty Mina, who's got no legs. So we'll probably do a little bit about lower limb rehab with him and stuff like that to keep him happy.
I appreciate that.
And then it's just going to be an amazing day. There's loads and loads of good speakers and loads of people there. Just a good fitness day.
Brilliant. Right, well, thanks very much. We'll sign that one off. So that's episode 5. Brilliant.
Lovely.
Cheers, guys.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cheers, that then.
Thanks, guys. That was
Okay, that was another episode of the Merseyside Health Podcast with Dr. Ash Cox and Gary McNamara from Plug-in Rehab. They were absolutely brilliant, and I think you can see that they've got so much knowledge and experience there. At some point, I will try and tempt them back on and drill down into some more details, because we really did just run out of time there. I probably asked them about 10% of the questions I'd written down and wanted to get through. If you have questions that you'd like to ask them in future episodes and things like that, why not drop me a message and I'll make a note of them and see if I can include them. Please remember that this is supposed to be a local Merseyside podcast. So if you've got a fitness story to tell, or if you know someone that does, or you think would be great for the podcast, then please get in contact with me, and I'll do everything I can to get as many different voices out there. Okay, thanks very much. See you next time.